Well, hi, and welcome back to the LTD Leadership Lean In, our internal podcast all about leadership, change, and personal growth, where our goal is to help you lead like never before in your hotel and in your home. I'm Sam, your host and Vice President of Sales here at LTD.
And I'm Richard Murphy, our Corporate Director of Training and Development.
So we are incredibly honored that you have chosen to join us today. And if you're new with us here, we actually release a brand new leadership teaching on the first day of every single month. And I know a lot of you go through this with your team, which I think is tremendous because when the leader gets better, everyone gets better.
Yeah, we really appreciate everybody who watches these, but those who actually take these learnings back to their team, shares it with them, whether they're showing the actual videos or just what they learned from these videos with their team to help everybody get better. We really appreciate all you guys do.
Yeah. And of course, we have the downloadable resource guide, which is available in the link below, in the show notes below. And we would love to hear from you. So we really want to encourage you to send us any questions that you might have. And I think that we are going to start a new segment with these questions that you're sending us.
Called Questions and Answers.
Ooh, that's a creative name, Questions and Answers. So please send us your questions. We really want an opportunity to hear from you directly and to take some time to relay any sort of insight that we might have or answer any questions here on the podcast. So please send us, I think it's LTD Lean In, correct?
At gmail.com.
LTD Lean In at gmail.com. We'll make sure we put it in the show notes below so that you can find us, but email your questions there. But also if you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear from you. So LTD Lean In at gmail.com, and you can reach us right from there. So
yeah, we really appreciate the questions. It helps us generate content and gives us stuff that we don't have to write ourselves because y'all do it for us.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, it makes our jobs a lot easier. So
okay, so if you guys did enjoy the interview with James last week, maybe you're thinking, that seems like a fun part to be of it. I want to be on the interwebs. Or maybe you know somebody who would be a great interviewee. Now, this episode and next episode is all about giving and receiving feedback. Did we already talk about this? Did I ruin something?
No, I think you might have just, I think you've ruined the surprise.
All right.
But that's okay.
Well, so after watching this episode, if you or somebody you think would be a great interviewee or somebody who would like to join the podcast, please let us know or send them your way because we're always looking for people to be excited to join us.
Okay.
Cool. All right. And I want to start off with a question.
Ooh. What's the question?
What is the shortest word in the English language that has the letter A, B, C, D, E, and F?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not good at riddles. So you tell me.
The answer is that right? Feedback?
Feedback?
Yes.
Oh, how shocking.
How do I know this?
How do you know this, Richard?
I don't know. I assume it's true. Sam told me about that before, and I don't know if I even told the joke right or the riddle right. So
I think you did a perfect job.
Thank you.
You did a great job.
Well, that's what we want to talk about in this episode. The very important and valuable and essential tool of feedback.
Yeah.
Team, if we get this right, feedback can help change our personal growth and the growth of our organization. In fact, it is so important, surprise, we're going to break this out over 2 episodes, focusing on receiving this episode, and then next episode, how to give feedback.
Okay, so just to clarify, this week, what we're learning about today is receiving feedback, how to receive feedback well. And then next time, we're going to talk about how to deliver feedback or how to give feedback.
Absolutely. Because as we'll establish, we need to start with being able to receive feedback before we can even give it ourselves.
Okay, good. All right, well, let's go ahead. We're going to dive right in. So feedback is actually all of the information that's available to you about you. It's actually how we learn about ourselves and the impact that we're having on other people in the world around us. So feedback can be either formal or informal. It can be spoken or unspoken. So yes, your performance review, everybody's favorite, right? That is feedback. But it's also, I don't know, the way your daughter's eyes light up when she sees you in the audience of her recital. That's feedback. And it's those little parenting tips, right, from your in-laws. That's also feedback. And it's the pain in my left foot right now, right? That's feedback. It's an old running injury, and it's telling me that perhaps I shouldn't have worn those high heels that I wore yesterday. But again, that is also feedback. So I want to start with a bit of an illustration. So I think this will help us understand why feedback is so important. So Thomas Goethes, he's an author. He wrote an article in Wired magazine about this big problem in Garden Grove, California. So years ago, they were having a lot of trouble with motorists, and they were speeding in school zones, and they couldn't figure out what to do about this issue. And it was really becoming an extremely dangerous situation for students, right? So the community, they tried everything. They tried new signs, they tried flashing lights, they tried ticketing, basically everything they could to stop the speeding motorists. And I guess someone had this idea around 2003 or so. It's now a pretty common practice, I think, today, but evidently this was the first time, or at least the first time that it was written about. But basically, they put up a speed display, right? A display that shows the drivers how fast they were traveling. So in other words, if you were driving, say, 35 in a 25, it would tell you, right, that you were driving 35 right as you would drive by. We're all familiar with what this looks like now. And essentially what they were doing is they were providing the motorists feedback in real time. So now what's interesting about this, and the reason why we're talking about this story, is that all of the drivers, they already had a speedometer, okay? So they knew how fast they were driving. They could self-monitor, but, right, I said, like, so everyone could self-monitor, but when they were receiving feedback from an outside source in real time, their behavior changed dramatically. So not only did the speeding drop significantly, but in 3 of the school zones, apparently, it actually averaged well below the speed limit. So the question is what happened? What happened? Feedback, the immediate feedback of the speed display actually improved or solved much of the problem.
Yeah, I think in this example, we're learning something or showing that we've had additional feedback that's telling us stuff we already know.
Right.
Like you said, we already have our speedometer that tells us how fast we're going.
Mm-hmm.
We get that feedback all the time. We probably even know we're speeding. But that speedometer that's supposed to be our primary indicator, we've learned to ignore because we've heard that feedback all the time and it's become stale with us. But even receiving that same thing in another medium has now triggered us to pay attention to it again. And we receive that in our work lives. Your supervisor is constantly telling you that it's important for you to show up to work.
Right.
Show up to work on time, I mean.
Yes, obviously.
But show up to work on time. 5 minutes makes a big difference. But then my colleague says to me one day, hey, you're only 5 minutes late, but every time you do that, it makes us all wait. And it gets kind of annoying sometimes.
Right.
Same feedback, but a different audience making me redo it. As a parent, you can tell your kid the same thing every day, as far as you got to do this, you got to do that. But as soon as they receive that feedback from a teacher or a friend or even grandma, it has a big difference because it's a different voice giving that same information.
Right. So without a doubt, right, the most important tool that we have to develop in our organization is really a consistent culture of feedback. That's really what we're trying to achieve here, a consistent culture of feedback. And I like what Ken Blanchard said. He said, feedback is the breakfast of champions, and I like champions. So here's what we say: without honest and timely feedback, your personal and our organizational growth will always be limited, right? So let me say that again. Without honest and timely feedback, your personal and our organizational growth will always be limited.
Yeah, we really have to open ourselves up to the feedback because, as established, we get it all the time. People are verbally, non-verbally, written, formally, informally. Feedback is always there. So we need to open ourselves up for it if we truly want to be better. I think just like ignoring that speedometer, we ignore what we already know is opportunity to improve, or we ignore what we're constantly hearing.
Right. Yeah. So these are the conversations, these feedback conversations that really influence employee engagement. They really enable or disable cross-functional collaboration, right? I mean, these are the conversations that enable leaders to get the best out of their people. And by the way, people to get the best out of their leaders.
Yeah, feedback is a two-way street. So it's not always us coaching or counseling those who work or look up to us, but
Right.
we need to be able to also give that feedback to our supervisors.
Right.
And the best way to do that is to encourage it. To actually respect once you receive it. Because as soon as you shut down that avenue to receive it, it's no longer going to be there. I mean, I think very often our new leaders will be hearing great ideas from those that they lead, and because they've tried it before, we'll immediately shut that down with we've tried that, it doesn't work. That's a good idea. I had the same thing though, it doesn't work. And while that may seem helpful or speaking from experience, we immediately shut down that opportunity.
Yeah. And obviously when you do that, oftentimes people will be less and less likely to give you feedback if you do not acknowledge it. We don't always have to take it. We don't always have to do what people suggest, but we certainly should acknowledge it and respect, right, when people are doing that. So what's interesting is that most people don't know how to give helpful feedback. That's just the reality of it. What's equally challenging, though, is that many people, they don't know how to receive it either. Okay, we receive feedback every day. Every day, all of our lives, we've been graded, we've been ranked, rated, scored, chosen, accepted, rejected, invited, we've been left out. All of those are feedback, right?
Yeah, you take a test, the feedback is your score.
Right.
You ask somebody out on a date, the feedback is yes or no.
Yes or no. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's not so important about the making sure that you receive the feedback, but you also have to be able to handle that feedback.
Right.
Use it to improve yourself. Use it to accept other people's opinions. Use it to both allow you and your team to be better and grow.
Right. So, not shocking, I'm going to recommend a book.
Great.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to recommend a book. This book really will help you dive deep into this subject. It's actually called Thanks for the Feedback. Thanks for the Feedback. It's by Sheila Heen and Douglas Stone. And it really helps shape a lot of the content for this teaching. And it can be a very, very helpful book. So I just want to encourage you, if you want to learn more about what we've kind of we briefly overview today, I want to encourage you to seek out some additional knowledge through that book. It's called Thank You for the Feedback, and we'll reference that in the show notes. So, but ultimately, the problem with receiving feedback is oftentimes it meets the juncture of two human needs. And this is what Sheila Heen and Douglas Stone speak about a lot. So it's the juncture of these two human needs. On one hand, we want to learn and we want to grow. And one of the biggest, most exciting things, right, is learning and leaning in, right? That's why we participate in something like the Leadership Lean In podcast, right? So new insights, new ideas, new ways to approach old problems, that can be exhilarating, that can be joyful, and this drive and this thirst for learning and mastery and getting better means that feedback on one hand should be joyful. Those mentorship conversations, they can be exciting because they mean that we get the opportunity, we get to learn and we get to grow.
Yeah, and while we want to grow and we want to get better, we also want to be respected and loved the way we are now.
Yeah.
And the very idea or fact of feedback shows that we have opportunity for improvement, that maybe those that we surround ourselves with still think that we can be better.
Yeah.
And this helps me understand why I feel conflicted about feedback. I say that I want to be better. I say that I want to grow, but at the same time, whether it's my wife or my boss or, a stranger giving me feedback, it's something that I can be better, it still stings a little bit, despite the audience, because I love being praised, but at the same time, I want to grow. So I have to find a way to accept that feedback. And, people think that the important things that they've learned so far come out of those painful experiences, right?
Yeah.
Anything that doesn't kill us makes us stronger.
Yes.
But yeah,
Is that a Kelly Clarkson song?
I think it is. I mean, I'm not going to give her credit for inventing the expression, but yes. But yeah, so we have to be able to put ourselves in painful situations, right?
Yes.
Because those are what allow us to get better. And if we can make something out of that, then we will be able to grow.
Yeah. Painful feedback. I think about it like from exercise perspective.
Yeah.
I did a competition this weekend, and I definitely was receiving some feedback from my body that I maybe am not as fit as I once was. And so that was some very real uncomfortable feedback that I received in the moment, right? But putting myself in that uncomfortable situation was good for me, because now I know what I need to work on if I do desire to grow in that area.
Yeah, or to continue the metaphor of working out, I think about how, as somebody who infrequently exercises, after I do, like that next day where I'm sore, I'm literally in pain, but I'm proud of that pain. It feels good that my muscles ache versus, if I just woke up on a Tuesday and like, I feel like crap.
Yeah.
In this case, I feel good about the pain. So can I make that same connection to feedback where I'm feeling the pain, but knowing that that's me getting better?
Yeah, I love that. I just came up with that. I know you did. It's very good. I'm super impressed. Look at us ad-libbing, guys. So what do we need to learn? Well, let me start by suggesting, right, that although we throw this feedback word, there are actually 3 different kinds of feedback with very different purposes. And we actually, as individuals, we need all 3 to learn and to grow. So an easy way to remember them is ACE. Okay, so whenever we're thinking about this, we can use the word ACE, ACE, appreciation. Are we writing this down in your notes?
My pen doesn't work. Got it. ACE.
Yes, ACE.
Appreciation.
Coaching.
Coaching.
And evaluation.
Evaluation.
Yep. So appreciation. Appreciation says, I see you. I see you. I get you. Appreciation keeps us motivated. It builds relationships. It encourages people. Appreciation might seem like a lot of people might not even see appreciation as a form of feedback, but no relationship, whether personal or professional, can stay healthy without enough appreciation.
Yeah, I think as leaders, we often don't show enough appreciation based off of the fact that most of our jobs require us to find and improve what's deficient, right? If you're a housekeeping inspector, you go into the room and you see what's wrong.
Yes.
As a front desk leader, you go in and you check over your associates' work and you find what they've done wrong. And we don't see what was done right because it's not there. It's not as prevalent. So we do need to focus and make sure we take the time to just appreciate not even the over the top work, but even just the meeting the expectation work is being done on a regular basis is often forgotten.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's appreciation. So the A in ACE, right? So next is coaching. Coaching is really anything that helps you get better at something, to grow your skills, to grow your knowledge, your efficiency, or your effectiveness. So really anything that's aimed to help you learn and to grow.
Yeah, I mean, obviously an example of coaching would be a coach, right? And that's purely what they're there for. They're to
Yeah.
make the team get better, or, you know, whether it's a life coach to get your life together, they're focusing on what you can improve.
Right.
A mentor who you can go to for advice is coaching you through any of this stuff. Anybody in those moments where they're pulling you through that is getting you to giving you the energy, giving you what you need to then be able to learn and get better.
Perfect. Yeah. And then last but not least, we have evaluation. Not everybody's favorite part of feedback, but nonetheless a critical component. So evaluation oftentimes rates or ranks you against a set of criteria or against your peers, right? So it tells you how you're doing, where you stand, and what to expect. So circling back to my previous example of a competition that I did this weekend, feedback was telling me from my body that I maybe wasn't as fit as I once was. And certainly my ranking also affirmed that I am not as fit as I once was. But nonetheless, the evaluation component was a critical component because it tells me where I stand amongst my peers. It's just a data point, and it's telling me where I have opportunities to grow and gives me a benchmark, right? If I want to do this again, of where I might have some opportunity to progress. So
yeah, examples of evaluations that we all experience. Obviously, that performance review that comes annually, semi-annual. You know, you have each line of meeting expectation, falling below expectation, exceeding expectation. The race that you run, your time is your expectation, or the score at the end of a game is telling you the evaluation there.
Right.
Your cholesterol numbers or blood pressure levels is an evaluation of your health in different ways. In our personal lives, when that dreaded question, so where's this relationship going, pops up, triggers the evaluation to actually have that conversation that looks over and evaluates everything in your relationship.
Yeah, people want to know where they stand, right?
Yeah, exactly. And need that evaluation.
Yeah. So coaching actually helps us to get better, and evaluation tells us where we stand as an individual in any capacity. So Richard, just a quick question on this topic. So maybe on your team or in a relationship that you have, how much of each of these types of feedback, so ACE of the appreciation, the coaching, or the evaluation, how much of each of these do you think that you're getting, and what would you like more of?
I mean, it's always nice to have more appreciation, right? Because appreciation is nice. It makes you feel good.
Yes.
But appreciation without any other components of it just is eating sugar all the time. You know, at a certain point, it does you no value and you don't enjoy it anymore.
Sure.
And, you know, I think like, well, coaching makes me better. Evaluating shows where I'm at, but coaching without evaluation just seems like somebody's picking on me, right? Evaluation is just giving me a score without letting me grow to get better without the coaching.
Yeah.
And if I'm just focusing on coaching and evaluation and don't have the appreciation involved in it, then it does just seem like somebody's constantly poking at me, making me feel bad about myself, and I don't get to celebrate the successes. So, I mean, it's probably a self-serving answer that you're looking for, but I think you need all three, and which is why you need that ACE triangle of all 3 points to successfully work. I don't think or a tripod or I don't know. But it's, you know, it's a 3-legged stool, right? And if you remove any leg, it's going to fall over. It can't stand on its own.
So we need a balanced approach.
Yes.
Yeah. That's great. So let's talk about some factors that matter when receiving feedback. Because again, remember, our discussion today is really all about how can we learn to receive feedback better and make better use of the feedback. So most of us, we want to know when we're doing something right? But a lot of us, like you were mentioning earlier, Richard, right? We fear when we're hearing what we're not doing right, or what we might not be doing well. And oftentimes the reason is because we don't understand the value of the feedback.
So are you going to give us the factors?
I can do that.
Thank you.
Okay. So the factors that we want to consider, right? Number one, we need to reframe how we think about feedback. So we need to change our mindset around feedback. We don't dread feedback, we crave feedback. Okay. Feedback helps us grow. Feedback can't be something that we endure. It really needs to be something that we embrace. I'm not dreading feedback. I'm looking forward to it. I don't tolerate it. I need it. You want it because you see the value in it. So number one factor in how to best receive feedback or learn to receive feedback is to really change your mindset around feedback from where we're dreading it to a place where we're craving it and we're embracing it. And that comes from understanding the value in feedback.
Yeah, I think about a room attendant who truly wants the GM to come in and inspect their room, or because they're
a great point.
Because if you're proud of your work, then you want that evaluation, right?
Sure.
I remember, honestly, even relatively recently, when it's time for those evaluations, even if they're relatively good, I'm just scrolling to that point where somebody's given me that lower rating, that 3 instead of a 4 or whatever,
right,
that I'm jumping to and immediately ignoring even all the positive feedback. But I need to hear all of it, pay attention, and truly accept the fact that this is my opportunity to be better. This is what I can focus on to grow and be that room attendant that's excited to get the information of how we can grow, so that when I show that improvement, I can be better.
Yeah, that's great. That's an awesome example.
Thanks.
So the second factor is we want to separate the do from the who. We're going back to the
do the do.
Listen, I like to throw in like a Dr. Seuss sort of rhyme every so often.
Sponsored by Dr. Seuss and Mountain Dew.
Maybe. Separate the do from the who, guys. So one reason that we don't like feedback is that that tells us how to improve is that it's oftentimes it can feel like a critique of who we are. It can feel like a critique of who we are. And that's really not the case when it comes to good feedback. Good feedback is about performance and actions. It's not about identity. And so when you find yourself getting defensive, right, you're likely hitting a bit of a trigger. And the more that you push back, the more we might need to lean in, right, and listen instead.
And get better. Not too early.
Too early. We're not ready to wrap it yet.
Yeah. So if somebody is telling me my performance isn't strong, I need to separate the fact that you're not saying, Richard, you're bad at your job.
Right.
You're saying, Richard, this aspect can grow and get better.
Right.
That I need to focus on the do of what it is that particular task that I can improve on, or that particular attribute of my job that can grow. That's a task. That's not me. That's a product of what I do,
right,
not who I am.
Right.
Because if it was who I am, it wouldn't be improvable. But yes. But if I focus on those tasks and know that this is what I can do, and then grow and be better, this is not just who I am.
Right. Separate the do from the who. Right.
Yes.
So what I try to do is I try to remember that as I'm receiving feedback that I'm not fixed. Okay. And in fact, I'm going to give another book recommendation. Are you surprised?
No.
Okay. So some of you may have read this book or heard of it, or maybe seen the TED Talk. Maybe that's a more palatable approach, the TED Talk. Her name is Carolyn Dweck, and she wrote the book Mindset. And in that book, she talks about how we shouldn't have a fixed mindset, and that instead we want to have a growth mindset. So if you're giving me feedback about my performance, I have the ability to change my performance because I'm not fixed, because I have the ability to grow. I see this as an opportunity to grow because I have that growth mindset. So your feedback becomes valuable because it's giving me objective insight to my performance, and it's actually helping me get better, which ultimately I want to do. the vision of this organization is the constant pursuit to be better. That means that we have a growth mindset and that we're operating under the assumption that we have the ability to improve. And my job in receiving feedback is to stay open-minded with that, keeping that in mind.
Yeah, that moment that you feel most uncomfortable during the feedback process is your opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done. I mean, it still brings up a feeling of hurt or anger or any of those feelings that we could perceive as being negative feelings during that process, because it's telling you that you still have opportunity, and it's really training your brain and training your essence to believe that that's not a bad thing. Like, we all want to get better. I think that we all look at anything we make an effort on, if we're not seeing growth, then we're disappointed in ourselves, right?
Sure.
Anything you do, anything you're passionate at, if you're not getting better, then you're disappointing yourself.
Yeah.
And how do you get better if you're not willing to look at where your opportunities are to get better? And really, any feedback you're getting that tells you that gets you to focus in on that. And if you focus in on being wrong or not fair or negative, that you'll never be able to grow. But if we focus on those attributes, that's where we can grow and focus on growing in those areas the most.
Yeah. I think about the thought of react versus respond.
Mm-hmm.
I think oftentimes our initially we will react to feedback versus respond. There is a difference. One is obviously reactionary. Response is more intentional, more thought out. And like you said, it's takes time to train your brain to respond to feedback, to digest the information and really allow yourself to think on, okay, if I'm being open-minded about this, what can I pull from this feedback that I'm getting that I can actually use to grow and be better, versus the initial instinct to react and just say, I disagree, or they don't know me, or they don't know what I've been through, or they don't understand my job. That's a reaction. And some of that may be true, but a mature response would be to digest that information and pull out, hey, what are some of the things that I can pull from this that actually may be true and that I can use to help myself grow.
Yeah.
So we don't dread feedback, right? We crave feedback.
Yes.
Obviously. Right? And we are going to be separating the do from the who. So feedback, in my opinion, feedback is common, but helpful feedback is rare.
So, I mean, I think it's really on my point of view that all feedback could be helpful. Like, I can't think of an example that feedback would be unhelpful. Like, can you give me an example of feedback that you would say is unhelpful?
Richard, you're not a good leader.
All right. Okay. So while that feedback itself is not doing anything to grow, it gives me something to focus on, right? So maybe, yes, that feedback in itself doesn't really give me anything to go on except for to focus, well, I need to be a better leader. So really, I need to get more out of you. So my response to that would be, appreciate the feedback. Feedback is a gift. Just kidding. But I would say, well, thank you for bringing that to my attention, because it's not easy to always give feedback, especially, in any case, if somebody fights you on it. But then I would say, well, can you give me some examples of things that I can focus on, or give me an example of where I failed as a leader so I can look at that, because it is important for me to improve that. We were referencing the, asking somebody out on a date, right? The feedback there could be the negative, no, or you're ugly. But if the feedback was you're ugly, I'm not going to date you, then therefore I could say,
at least you know why.
I appreciate the feedback. What are some things I could do about my appearance that would make me more palatable to somebody like you?
So what you're saying is we ask clarifying questions?
I mean, yes, that's exactly
Okay.
what I intended by all
Okay.
that.
So I think ultimately what we're trying to get at here is that feedback is common, helpful feedback is rare. How you make feedback helpful, right, is to ask clarifying questions. So this question, like, hey, do you have any feedback for me? That's a terrible question to start with, because general questions rarely lead to specific answers. And when we're receiving feedback, helpful feedback, you're going to want specific answers so that you can actually action against whatever that feedback might be. So if you were to hear something that you maybe didn't like, right, and in some feedback, when that happens, you don't get defensive, right? We're talking about the response versus react. Don't get defensive. Instead, we want to train ourselves to say things like, tell me more. Tell me more. Help me understand. And don't just wait for the feedback, right? Seek it out. It will make you better. And it will show, it'll show that you value those around you and you value their insights. And it certainly will help better prepare you to receive it if you're the one initiating the ask. But the important thing is when you are initiating the ask of feedback, so when you're approaching, say, your leader, instead of approaching your leader and saying, do you have any feedback for me? Ask specific questions around the areas of feedback that you're interested in.
Yeah, and so if I've already received this feedback, or maybe I failed in a very specific question, or I asked a specific question that maybe could have been more specific. And for the example of, Sam, how do I become a better manager? And you say, you're not a good leader. Well, I asked a bland question, I got a bland answer. So then instead of being like, you don't know what you're talking about, I'm a great leader, because maybe what she said in such a bland statement may be incorrect, right?
Right.
But what she's trying to say is, I noticed that when you are leading the team, that you don't give opportunity for people to express how this is going. And I could follow that up with by then saying, tell me more about this. I want to understand specifically what are some things that I can do to be a better leader.
Yeah, I think that's the key. What can we action against? That's what makes feedback helpful, when we actually have something tangible from the feedback to work on to help us improve. If it's overly general, then you're just sort of sitting there going, okay, you're telling me I'm not a good leader, but I don't know what that means. What about my leadership style is not good? That's not super helpful. And that's not going to really help you grow. But when that happens, if you were to receive feedback that way, the encouragement here is to, again, ask those clarifying questions and just get more information that you can actually action against. So the other really important thing that we want to think about is trying to seek, like we were talking about, seek out feedback before game day. So when I say game day, like, let's think about before, if you're a general manager and you have to do business review meetings, instead of coming in, doing the review meeting, and then after the meeting saying, okay, Scott, Richard, do you have any feedback for me? Instead, maybe before game day, you actually seek out feedback in advance, or maybe before QA, QA is coming, right? So seek out the feedback that you might have around your specific position or your area of influence and say, what specific things from a feedback perspective can help me improve in this area? So seeking it out in advance is always the best way, instead of waiting for someone to deliver it to you after the fact.
Yeah, obviously getting it better earlier is better. Seeking it out in general is great. I mean, even in this example of the business review, they seeked it out after it, but they could have prepared themselves.
Right.
But I think just seeking out the feedback in general it's easier to receive. If I asked you to tell me some things that I can improve upon myself, I've already just psychologically prepared my body to receive this feedback.
Good point.
As opposed to just getting it out of nowhere, as opposed to getting that dreaded, hey, come see me in my office, where I know I'm going to receive it. That if I just said, hey, Sam, can I meet with you later on today? I really want to discuss how I can improve. And I'm ready. I'm, kind of just ready to take the punch.
Yeah.
It's no longer a
No,
punch. Now
that's
it's
actually a
actually
good point.
making me feel better about
Yeah. It's funny how you have a physical reaction. Like you're
Mhm.
you're I mean you're literally showing, I mean you're really preparing your physical being to receive that, because it is a physical thing. I mean, you really do have to prepare your mind and your physical body to receive it, and seeking it out, like you said, in advance will help you do that. It will not only help you perform better on game day,
Mhm.
but it will also help you be in a better position to respond and not react, and to really digest the information.
Yeah.
And honestly, could also give the deliverer of the feedback more time to prepare a better, more comprehensive response versus some of those general feedback responses that we get sometimes. So all in all, I think that sort of seeking it out is super important.
Yeah, I really didn't even think about that till just now. Obviously, we want the feedback to get better, or we want to do it, but then the added bonus of when you seek it out, it is just naturally easier to take. And that takes no matter what that, annual evaluation is coming. So I can't seek that out ahead of time. But if
Right.
this is all stuff that I know that I'm working on and that I've talked to my supervisor about it, then when it's time for that evaluation coming, we'll be like, yeah, it may even be noted that that is already a work in progress.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if it's, seeking out the feedback from those who I'm working with, that they're telling me you need to get better, so that when it's time to be evaluated, you're prepared all around for it.
Yeah. I know that I can point to several times, I think, in my leadership journey throughout my career, where feedback has basically totally changed the way the way I've approached leadership in general. I can think of a very specific example where years ago we had a 360-degree review. I'm not sure. Do you know what? So 360 review is where you receive feedback from 3 areas of the organization, from people that you lead, people who are in your peer group, and then also the people that lead you. And so it's all anonymous, but it's a great opportunity to receive feedback on yourself, because it is anonymous and it's coming from multiple different audiences. And in this 360 review, it was noted that there was a perception of a lack of humility. And I was young and I was hungry and I was competitive. I had no idea that that was people's perception of me, or that that was how I was coming across as a leader, that I lacked humility. But because that review of that assessment of me really gave me an opportunity to reflect on myself and think through. And the great thing about that review was they gave specific, really gave, hurts the heart a little bit, gave specific examples of behaviors that I had, or certain things in my nature that made them feel like I lacked humility in my leadership. So I had a lot to go on, and it really helped me in the long term from a self-reflection standpoint, and gave me specific things that I could be working on so that I could grow in that area, so that I could connect better with the people that I loved and that I was trying to lead and pour into, so that they would receive coaching and appreciation and evaluation better from me, if I could modify some of these behaviors that I had. It was a blind spot. Again, I just thought that I was competitive and hungry. I'm in sales, and I didn't realize that that was people's perception of me. And so I'm so thankful that I had that opportunity to get that feedback early, really early on in my career, because had I not received that, who knows if I would have had the same growth trajectory or the ability to serve in a position that I'm in now, and serve these, serve in the manner that I am. I'm not sure that I would have had that opportunity had I not changed some of the behaviors that I had earlier on in my career. So that's a very honest assessment. And I'm in like I said, in the beginning it hurt, but
Uh-huh.
I was, in the end, I'm very thankful that I had that.
Yeah, and I think for you, even if maybe at your point in your career you didn't need to work on that for the direction you were going in, obviously knowing that humility is something that you can work on is definitely altered where you're at right now, and it's a
Sure.
very
Yeah.
big part of it. Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, a somewhat similar story was I was, thinking I'm a great leader.
I
That
mean, we teach the leadership leading.
but yeah, and a not too long ago experience of, I always thought if I explain why to everybody, like so often we just tell people the what they need to do, that if I explain the why, everybody's going to fall in line.
Sure.
And in this specific example, I never liked anybody behind the front desk who didn't know how to check in a guest, whether they were waiting for a key or waiting for an answer from the front desk. I said, you can't be back there because if the guest is waiting, they think that you're ignoring them. You can't be there. Seems like a pretty easy thing to get my mind wrapped around, right?
Sure.
And then I would have an associate who kept just hanging out behind the front desk. And I would tell them, hey, can't be behind the front desk. Only allowed behind the front desk. You know how to check in a guest because this is my reason. And I explained the reason. And then they showed up behind the desk and, hey, remember, da, 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 da. After the third time, I just got so aggravated that I said, you need to leave now. I don't know how I can else explain it. I got aggravated at that point. And another associate who witnessed this came up to me and said, I really hurt this person's feelings. They were scared of me at that point. They had never seen me snap.
Right.
My immediate reaction is, good, like they need to get this through, and the kind approach wasn't working. Well, I'm so adamant about the why, when I'm teaching, that I didn't ever look into the why of when they're not following my direction. And so it was after meeting with that associate and asking them, why are you up there all the time? Why are you going up there? Is there something? And explain that she was trying to learn. She was trying to learn that, and the opportunity had never been presented on us to teach. How could I ever check somebody in if I've never taught and never had the opportunity to learn? And this associate wanted to gain that, and I never. So it altered me in the fact that I need to be asking the why question as much as I'm teaching the why answer to people.
Yeah, that's some immediate feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that there are so many examples of that. I think we can all probably reflect and think on several examples, and we just know, right, that helpful and honest feedback really can be the difference between us being a good leader and us becoming a great leader.
Yeah.
So I think we're ready to wrap it up.
Oh yeah.
Right. So maybe let's just review a couple of things.
Okay. So these questions are in the downloadable leader guide. So if you are going to write them down or don't have the chance to write them down right now, go ahead and download that later. But the first question I want to ask is, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how strong is your team at giving and receiving feedback? What could you do specifically to improve your feedback culture at your property? Number 2, in what area of your leadership could you use helpful feedback? Who are 3 people you could enlist to help develop you to improve? So this isn't just a simple question. Think first at who are 3 people who would provide you good, honest feedback, not just those who would lift you up, right, but those who would actually be able to give you the feedback that you would listen to and do something with.
Yeah.
And then what are 3 specific questions you could ask them to help you grow? That's question number 3 there.
Yeah.
What are 3 questions you could ask these 3 people that you enlisted to help you grow? Number 4, is there an area your leadership that you could get feedback in before game time? Things that that you already want to work on, that there's a period of time coming up that you want to get this corrected before, and what are you going to do about it once you get that feedback to be better?
Yeah.
And then finally, what is the number 1 skill you're currently developing based on recent feedback? If you can't answer this question, if you don't know what you are working on based off of recent feedback, then you got work to do.
Yeah, that means we need to be seeking feedback immediately. So we should always be working on something obviously in our pursuit to grow. So seeking that out immediately is critical. So like we said, all of that information is in the downloadable leader resource guide. You can find the link to that guide in the show notes below. And again, in the next episode, we are going to talk about how do we deliver helpful feedback. So like we said, this episode was all about how do we receive feedback, because it doesn't matter how great the delivery is, if the person's not prepared to receive the feedback, it's pretty useless. The whole exercise is useless. So now that we know how to receive feedback, next we're going to talk about how to deliver helpful feedback. So,
well, that's exciting.
yes.
That's the other part of it.
What else is exciting?
What else is exciting for is, if y'all remember, those who commented on the YouTube video have an opportunity to win a special prize.
Oh,
Should we talk about what the special prize is first?
We should definitely talk about what the special prize is. So we've been working on some merch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some LTD Leadership Lean In merch.
Yeah, it's not just regular merch, it's super cool merch. So we're looking at what, mugs
and t-shirts,
all the cool things. If you have ideas or if you have some feedback for us on the types of merch or what you think we should put on the merch, let us know. But obviously no podcast is complete without some merch. So we're working on that. So that is the prize.
So very exciting. You will get the first edition, first run of a LTD Leadership Lean In mug.
Not this mug.
No, I mean, this is a cool mug too. But when this one comes out, you'll get the first.
Yes.
Before any of your friends.
Yes. And inside of that will be a Starbucks gift card.
I think the mug's enough. Do you really need to get
you can't give a mug without coffee.
All right. So without further ado,
yes.
we intend to do that together. All right, I'm still here.
He's still here.
All right. So I'm going to refresh our most recent episode, the interview with James. And we're going to go through all of these I don't want to actually play you though. But we're going to go through all these actual comments, and let's see, of the 72 views, we have 4 comments. So
you guys, we need you to comment, like, subscribe.
It's all right. You got to play the lottery to win. So Rob, Scott, Stephanie, and VD, we appreciate your comments. I'm going to try to make this so Rob or Scott doesn't win and we got Stephanie or VD, but it's totally random who I'm picking. All right, you can't see my face right now, but I totally got my eyes closed to figure out where this is going to end. So let's, am I even on the page still? All right. So, all right, where did I end up? Am I on? Oh, wait, no, let me do this again. That was a misfire. So let's try this again. And you know what? Can we just get VD and Stephanie both of mine?
Both deserve them.
All right, so we'll figure out a better way to do that in the future. But thank you, VD and Stephanie, for commenting. You guys both win a mug. All right, yeah.
We need a soundboard.
More to come.
All
right, so I think that's it. We referenced the next episode, gave a little teaser on it. We wrapped it up. We went through our main. We got to do our tagline.
Yes, we can't close it out.
Start me up.
All right, ready?
Yes.
Let's lean in
and get better together.